May, and this is May's Crochets. I'm a beginner crocheter just starting off on my learning to crochet journey, and today I want to share with you the hardest amigurumi that I've made so far. Meet the Aries Zodiac Doll, made from the book Crochet Zodiac Dolls by Carla Mitrani, also known as Amour Crochet. So it's a really cool book. It has one crochet doll for every sign of the zodiac, so 12 dolls. And here is Aries. Let me show you the doll. Let me turn him around. I decided to name him Ari the Zodiac Doll, Ari the Aries Doll. Makes sense. I think it's fun to just give your amigurumi a name. Even if the pattern doesn't have one, just to sort of have some type of like personification, or you can sort of think of him as a person. Ari. Hi, Ari. Hi. Okay, so I did a whole other video about the yarn for the Zodiac doll. So I used Hobie Rainbow 8/4 cotton, which is what the book recommends. And I have a whole video about that, which I will link. It's really, really thin. It's a lot thinner than I think I expected. I'm a beginner crocheter. I've only been crocheting for a couple of months. But I saw this book, I saw these Zodiac dolls, and I thought it was super cute and kind of a different type of challenge. And so I thought I would give it a shot. And so, yeah, I bought the yarn that they recommended, which was this Rainbow Cotton 8/4 by Hobie. It's really, really thin. It's a fingering weight yarn. It's thinner than I think I expected, but I knew it was going to be a challenge and I felt like I was up for it. I did think going into it that there was a chance that I just like wasn't even going to be able to finish the doll, that I wasn't going to understand things in the written patterns. I've been doing a lot of the Woobles Learn to Crochet kits, which have instructional videos, and that's how I've been like learning to crochet. And so it's nice to always have the video reference for those, but this is just a written pattern. So let me see if I can figure it out. So I do feel pretty proud that I was able to finish the doll. He's definitely not perfect, but what a great learning experience. I will say I actually reached out to Amour Crochet on Instagram, asking her what doll she would recommend for a beginner to start with of the 12 dolls. And I wasn't sure if I would hear back. She's like kind of well known in the crochet community. But I did hear back from her on Instagram and I was so excited. And she recommended to start with Aries, the Aries doll. And actually Aries is the first doll in the book anyway. And I think it's the first when you do sort of the traditional like 12 zodiac signs. Traditional, you do start with Aries also. So I guess it all makes sense. But yeah, it was like a good one to start with. Looking at some of the other ones, I'm really excited to make them, but a lot of them have like some really intricate, like interesting parts that will be definitely a challenge. So this one had some intricate parts too, but look, he's done. So I used most of the same colors that the book recommended for the pattern. There were a couple exceptions. When I bought my Hobie Rainbow yarn online, the day that I bought it, there were certain colors that were sold out. And so I wanted to just do one big order and not have to like order again. And so I had to make some substitutions. The pattern in the book has the hair as black, and then the horns are like dark brown, I think. So I did a little bit of substituting. I made the hair dark brown and then the horns in this sort of dark gray. It also doesn't specify the skin color. It just says like pick a skin color, which is cool. So the picture in the book did have sort of a little bit of a more brown color, which I did also go with to contrast the more like beige outfit, which is what the book had. So mostly, some slight substitutions, but it came out looking pretty similar to the picture in the book. I used a 2.25 millimeter crochet hook for this. The book actually recommended using a 2.0 millimeter crochet hook, but the smallest one that I had was a 2.25, so I went with that. I have a set of Clover Amour crochet hooks that I bought kind of a multi-pack in a lot of different sizes, and the smallest one in that set was 2.25 millimeter. They do sell also a 2.0 millimeter, so maybe I'll consider getting that one for my next doll. Um, you can see there's like definitely some holes that are visible that maybe using a smaller hook would be good. So maybe I will give that a shot, but I used my 2.25 millimeter hook. It was definitely a challenge, especially at first. It's the smallest hook I've used, by far up until now. The thinnest weight yarn, this fingering weight, sock weight yarn, super fine yarn, really, really thin. So getting started was definitely hard doing like the magic rings and all of that. You kind of work your way up in the pattern. So you start with the legs, you do one leg and then the second leg, and then you do some cool stuff to like attach them where you kind of crochet around and you kind of you make some chain stitches to kind of do the part between the two legs, and then you work your way up. So the beginning was tough, but then once I got into the body, it kind of was a little more like standard, kind of what I was used to, just like single crochets and, decreases and things like that. So let's see, you kind of work your way up the body. You do the body, you go up to the neck. At some point, you start stuffing it. It says to stuff firmly. And so I don't know if I like overstuffed it, and that's why I have these holes that it's like stretching out a little bit. But I definitely stuff firmly. You switch colors between the body and the head, so around the neck, and you do a little bit more of the head, the bottom of the head, and then you stop and you turn it over to make this ruffly white collar. I guess it's easier to do that before the head is finished and stuffed, and then it's like harder. And so, yeah, you end up a couple times actually doing this technique where you do crochet in the back loops only, which leaves the front loops kind of exposed for you to then later crochet into. So that is, I think, how the collar worked, where you would, one of these rows, do just back loop only, leave the front loops exposed, and then when you go to make the ruffle collar, you crochet into the front loops, and so you automatically like have something there to attach to, which is kind of cool. And then the ruffle, yeah, it was just like a lot of single crochets. You just like keep doing more and more and more up until I think there's a round of 96 single crochets here, which is like maybe the biggest round I've ever made. But by doing so many of them and kind of having them get like bigger and bigger, it ends up making this sort of ruffle because there's only so much space, so it kind of ruffles back together, which is kind of cool. And it also the collar ends up covering up the neck. The color change and also like the neck I think can be a little wobbly, so it kind of helps with that. So that's cool. And then let's see, then you go back to the head to finish off. You pause at the nose round. You do it's called a bobble stitch, which is just like a whole bunch of, I guess, crochets in the same stitch to make that nose, which is cool. At some point you stop and you add the eyes, and then you finish the head. And so without like the hood and everything, the head looked huge. I was surprised, like the eyes were way far down and the head went all the way up to here, and I was like, is this right? But once you like add the head and the horns and everything, it looks a little more more normal. Okay, so you do all of that, and then let's see, then you make the arms one at a time, in two different colors. You've got your skin color and then this beige color for sort of to match the outfit. So you make each of the arms, and then let's see, you make the hood. So the hood wasn't too bad to make. You kind of make it separately. It's really pretty standard, just rounds, 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 increases, and then a bunch of single crocheting. Actually attaching the hood was a little bit harder to get it to like line up flush and not like pucker at all. But the hood itself, crocheting was like pretty standard, pretty decently easy. The hair was an interesting challenge. So the hair you actually add into the inside of the hood. You do the opposite of what I was talking about before, where you crochet just the front loop and you leave the back loop exposed. So the back loops are like towards the bottom on the inside here. And then when you do the hair, you crochet into those back loops just inside the hood. And that's what you can attach for the hair. When I first did it, I actually did it wrong. I had the hood like backwards, and so I had the hair like it was basically facing the wrong direction. Not that it would look terrible, but like there is sort of a direction to these single crochets in the kind of the hair curls. So I had to I did a couple, I had to undo and start again. But all of these are basically chains, and then you crochet, single crochet into the chains. And that is what makes these sort of curls. I saw later elsewhere in the book, there's like a tip that says if you want thicker curls, you can even double crochet into the chains, but I did not do that. I did single crochet and I think it came out fine. There's a whole bunch of these strands, a little bit like of intricate work to make the hair. And then the horns, there's kind of a cool pattern here where you do again, you do rows of single crochet alternated with rows where it's back loop only and you see the front loops exposed. And it just sort of makes this like really cool texture, which is neat. I think my horns, one came out like bigger than the other. I'm not exactly sure why. I think I did exactly the same thing for each of them. So I'm not sure about that, but oh well, learning experience again. And then you assemble it all together. And so you add the hood, trying to like get it to not pucker, I guess. And then this is actually the first time. So usually when you sew on a piece to another piece, you sew like straight into these single crochets on the edge, but that doesn't work with this hair. Like you would end up with not being able to kind of get through the hair and you'd end up with exposed yarn. And so instead, I think what the book was saying, which I ended up doing, is like you basically, it's more just like sewing, like regular sewing. You sew into like right towards the bottom. You just go sew all the way into the head, kind of along this bottom row to get it to be fully attached to the head. And so it ended up with like a little bit of like puckering, I guess, but not too bad. Oh, and it also, this is sort of a funny little detail to embroider. You basically embroider, or you make a couple more strands of hair, and that you then embroider to the head. And that, I think you're supposed to put the hood on, see where it's going to end up, take it off, and then put these little strands of forehead hair wherever it makes sense. And so, I don't know, it was like, at first I was like, oh, maybe I should like skip that, but it's such a good little detail. Like it's just such a little small thing that adds so much character to the face to have those little bits of forehead hair. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, you add on the arms, and you add on the horns directly to the hood. As with a lot of my other projects, like getting it exactly symmetrical, I've found it to be a challenge. I think my horns, again, they're not exactly the same size, so that's a challenge. But I don't think I sewed them exactly symmetrically correctly, which is too bad. But again, oh well, learning experience, still came out fine. The book doesn't give you, the pattern is great. Everything is like really well done. I was able to follow it, as a beginner. But the one thing is, yeah, the assembly for some of the details, it doesn't tell you exactly where to attach the horns. Like it's basically like use your best judgment, and the hood too. It's like figure out what looks good depending on kind of how you made it. So I think if I do this pattern again, I'm gonna have to be a little more careful about the placement of the horns so that they're a little more centered, and maybe actually like use pins to attach them before I sew them on. I end up kind of more just like freehanding, oh, this looks about right, but then once you start sewing it, it ends up like pulling in a different direction. So that's something to work on for next time. And even the arms, they came out fine, but I think they're just like a little bit too far back. And if I were to do it again, I would want them a little more forward. But I think actually, again, like the first time I attached one of the arms, I had it backwards. I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, but it ended up looking like a different sort of angle. And so I flipped it. And now I think these came out pretty okay, like similar length and kind of angle and stuff. Not perfect. The legs also, somehow one is like a little bit shorter than the other. And I do have like, let's see here. There's a little bit of a hole. I don't know if you can see this sort of between the legs. Do you see that hole right there? I'm sure that was just a mistake in my what I was describing before, that you make the two legs and then you have some chain stitches to attach them, and then you kind of keep going rounds up, and that was definitely a challenge. Attaching these two legs with the chains, I'm sure I made a mistake in here, and that's where that hole came from. And yeah, I don't love that there's like all of these sort of bigger like holes. Again, maybe the hook size, and maybe just I stuffed it too much. The face actually looked a lot better. Not so many holes there. But yeah, this body definitely has some pulling. So yeah, for next time, I might try a 2mm hook. I'm also interested maybe at some point in trying this these patterns with like slightly thicker yarn. Like I use the Rainbow 8-4 from Hobie, but they also make Rainbow 8-6, which is just like a little bit thicker. It's 6-ply instead of 4. They also have Rainbow 8-8. But I might just like try to do a step up of 8-6 just to see. The book did say that the dimensions is 6 inches. 6 centimeters? No, 6 inches. And when I was ordering the yarn and really thinking about it, I didn't think about how small that is. 6 inches is tiny. I think in the end, this came out to 6 inches, except for the horns make it a little bit taller. But 6 inches is small. And so I could see trying to do this with the 8-6 yarn or maybe the 8-8 yarn and a slightly larger crochet hook. And you'd end up with a bigger doll, but it might be a little bit easier, a little sort of less intricate with these teeny tiny stitches. But I did buy all the 8-4 yarn for the entire book, so I'm pretty committed. I'm definitely gonna at some point make the rest of the dolls in the book. So we'll see which one I do next. Next up is typically Taurus, comes after in the calendar, and Taurus does look pretty cute, so maybe I'll try Taurus next. I have some room for improvement on some things, but yeah, what an amazing learning experience. I highly recommend this book, Crochet Zodiac Dolls, if you are interested at all in making dolls. Carla Mitrani, Amour Crochet. They're really well written. They're super, super cute. They have all kinds of cool details. And it's such a good experience. Such a sort of a different type of amigurumi than some of the other like plushies and things like that. So yeah, that is Ari the Aries Crochet Zodiac Doll. Thank you so much for keeping me company. And I'll see you next time. Bye.